This is Mr. Warden. Welcome to a second of 3 videos on Quadratics 12, the completion of the square part 2. I'm going to talk about problems like 2a and 2b here, where our middle coefficient is an odd number, and therefore we're going to be dealing with fractions. So I've created an example, and I'll probably create an extra one over here that will be like this. So our first thing you want to do, and I recommend this in pretty much all of these, is to get rid of whatever is there. And the way we're going to, and that way you can just work with just the x squared plus 7x, and it's a little simpler to figure out what you need to add to both sides. So I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. Okay, and so that's going to be x squared plus 7x and 92 and there's nothing there. So 92.75 minus 5 is going to be 87.25. Okay, so now I've got to figure out what am I adding here. What I'm going to add is I'm going to add the square of half of this middle coefficient. Now, I'll make note that this is a 1 here. Since this is a 1, this simplifies my job a lot. So I'm going to add 7 over 2. And then I'm going to square that. That's, of course, 3.5. I'll go ahead and do that on the other side as well. Plus 7 over 2 squared. And let's start cleaning that up. On the left side, I'm going to leave that in the parentheses. I could square 3.5 if I want to, and in fact, I will on the right. So that's 3.5. And let's work out 3.5. You can use a calculator for this. I'm fine with that. 3.5 squared is going to be 12.25. Okay, so I've got 12.25. Oh, I made a mistake here. That should have been 7.5. That should be 7.5. I made a copying mistake. Okay, so having it in Desmos allows me to catch those copying mistakes more easily. All right, so I have that. I'm going to go ahead and get the sum of that on the right. So 87.75 plus 12.525 is 100. So that's a 100 there. And I don't need that calculation anymore. And now it's time to factor this thing. So on the left side, I'm going to have x plus 3.5 squared. And on the right side, I'm going to have 100. And so I'm going to get the square root of x plus 3.5 squared. And on the right side, I'll get the square root of 100. And so on the left side, the square root of a square cancels out. So it's x plus 3.5 all by itself. Oops, 3.5. And that's going to equal the square root of 100, which is 10 or negative 10. And so now we just have to solve. So I'm going to subtract 3.5 from both sides. So x plus 3.5 minus 3.5 equals 10 minus 3.5. So x is going to equal 6.5. And we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to say x plus 3.5 minus 3.5 equals negative 10 minus 3.5. And so x, ooh, that's not a 3.5 there. Let me fix that. And x will equal negative 13.5. So our solutions are 6.5 and negative 3.5. So x is 6.5 and x is negative 13.5. I'm going to pause. Now I'm going to work a second equation here, and I would encourage you to try working this yourself. You could pause the video and see what my next step is. But assuming you pause the video, my next step was going to be, actually this should be like that, was going to be to get rid of the minus 14. And to do that, I'm going to add 14 to both sides. Okay, and that will leave me with okay, that's going to leave me with nothing on the left. And on the right, let's see, 49.75 plus 14 is 63.75. So that's 63.75. Okay, and now you may want to pause the video and see if you can figure out the next step. And assuming you pause the video, here's the next step. I check to see if there's a lead coefficient of 1. There isn't. There is, so I don't need to worry about it. And the middle coefficient, and I know it's only the second term, but I'm calling it the middle coefficient because eventually it will be, is 1. So what I need to do is add half of 1 squared. So 1 over 2 squared. And over here, I'm going to add that as well. 1 over 2 squared. And now we'll simplify everything. So on the right, I'll just turn that 1/2 squared is 1/2 times 1/2, or 1/4, which I'll write as 0.25. Okay, I'll put a 0 in front of it so it's a little easier to see on the screen. 0.125. Over here, I'm going to leave that as 0.5 because that'll help me when I am solving things later. Okay, now I'm going to simplify the right side. 63.75 plus 0.25 is 64. And now you may want to pause the video and see what the next step is. And the next step is, assuming you pause, is to factor the left side. So x plus 0.5 squared equals 64. Now, you may want to pause and see what the next step is. And the next step was to get the square root of both sides. So square root of x plus 0.5 squared. That's going to equal the square root of 64. And on the left side, that just becomes x plus 0.5 because the square root and the square canceled each other out. On the right, that's going to be 8, or it's going to be x point plus 0.5 equals -8 because there are two square roots of 64, 8 and -8. And now it's just a matter of subtracting 0.5 from both sides. So x plus 0.5 minus 0.5 equals 8 minus 0.5. That's not an 8. That should be an 8. Okay, there we go. And now that just becomes x equals 7.5. But we have to deal with the other one. So we're going to subtract 0.5 from both sides. X plus 0.5 minus 0.5 equals -8 minus 0.5, which is going to be x equals -8.5. And so our solutions are x is 7.5 and x is -8.5. And that's a good place to stop. I hope that was helpful.